It's been a really interesting couple of days, and what I want to do today is bring together a lot that has been said in this room over the last few days, and synthesize a lot of the ideas and concepts that have been presented here. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to talk a little bit about pivot. And pivot, as you're going to find out here shortly, it really is grounded in the fragility of life. And when I think about pivot, I've had really two career pivots. One was from the military into the energy space and the capital market space, and then my current move into the food space. If I go back to the military, really what I took away from it was this grounding in dynamic risk management. And if you think about it, back at the time I was 24 years old and walked onto the bridge of a destroyer, and the captain said, Mr. Theal, you have the watch, and you have charge of a 400-foot-long, $500 million warship, and everything funnels through you. You're the captain's eyes and ears. And first and foremost is the safety and security of the ship. If you want longevity in the Navy, don't hit anything and don't run it aground. And then after that, it's really about operational readiness and getting into real-world scenarios. And yesterday, if you saw David Roberts, one of the best presentations that I've ever seen, he had a picture of a little girl, and that little girl was essentially crawling to a food station in Africa. And I probably have 6 images in my military career of things like that are so profound and instilling about the fragility of life. And the one that jumped right into my head was 1994. The Prime Minister of Haiti was exiled, and a military general took over. And I went in, and HMCS Kootenay went in, and we enforced an embargo. And as we were out enforcing the embargo, we came across this boat, and it was 27 feet long, wooden sailboat, no sail, 56 people in it. And they were Haitian migrants, and their choice of life was what was the status quo on land or risking going out to sea. And if you know what freeboard is, freeboard's the distance between the water and the gunwale of that boat, and it had maybe 6 inches. In any sea state, they were gone. The image that jumped into my mind when we rescued them, we brought them on board, was this woman carrying her son up the ladder. We quarantined them in a hygiene area on the quarterdeck, put a awning up to take them out of the heat, and just that little boy's face it was like renewal. And it's profound. When I think about risk management, here's a good example of operational risk management. We turned those 56 people over to the US Coast Guard. They went to what was called Tent City at the time in Cuba, in Guantanamo Bay. We marked on the chart where that wooden sailboat was, and we went back. And we basically cut it in half with a 50 cal, like a buzzsaw. And that was really to not put any more lives at risk in that boat. That's your operational risk management 101. So I left the military, and what I think I got out of the military was this skill set of dynamic risk management. You're constantly re-rating the risks exposed to the ship. And that's what we do in business. And so it's been really evolutionary. What I want to do today is walk you through a lot of concepts that we've heard, and I want to distill them down into 3 key messages. One is purpose, one is cadence, and the last is visionary leadership. So when I talk about fragility, that was on a very macro scale. I went through my own fragility 3 years ago. And on a Friday night, I was playing hockey with my son. And as dads do, they go toe-to-toe with their kids. The next night, I dropped him off at the Calgary airport, and he went back to Western, went out for dinner. And at dinner, not even half a bottle of wine into it, I felt nauseous. And I went outside to get some fresh air, and I went down and had a traumatic brain injury was the crux of it. And what that was it was head pain. I can't describe it as a headache. 7 weeks on morphine, and really like you're walking around your house from fridge handle to kitchen island to chair to sit down. When I left the hospital, I was like, great, I get to watch the Vikings on Sunday. I couldn't even look at a television. But I went through that process, and with it, I took verbatim what the neurologist said in terms of recovery. And part of that recovery was diet. And I went on an anti-inflammatory diet. You're basically taking alcohol, caffeine, gluten, dairy, artificial sugars out of your diet. And that's now a regimented lifestyle diet for me. And as I went through that, it's a lot of omega-3s, fish, and alternative protein. And the undergrad economist in me, it really evolved into this, what's going on in the protein space in North America. And from adversity came Phyto Organix Foods. I founded the company in February 2021. And when you think about purpose, you couldn't more define purpose in terms of my personal circumstance. But as you see the world evolving, we care now as much about what's in our food as to how it's made and processed and what's the sustainability pedigree on that. So, what is the business? 40 minutes east of here in Strathmore, we're going to build a yellow pea wet fractionation facility. It's the first in Alberta, and it's really pioneering an industry in the province. And when you think about purpose, that word, I'm going to talk about purpose as a business, and I'm going to talk about purpose as a country. As a business, you need a social license to operate today. It's not simply generate a rate of return. And the other day, Steve Varley from E&Y, he had that term, F and ESG. And I'm actually going to frame for you and walk you through how to marry up the financial with ESG. And we use a concept at Phyto Organix called sustainability adjusted return on capital invested. And I'm going to walk you through how we look at our plant and designing it to be a net zero food processing facility. It'll be the first wet fractionation net zero facility in North America. And you can see sustainability in our business vision, mission, and motto. It's in there, in every statement. And it boils down to waste minimization, GHG, getting to net zero, just having that sustainability pedigree. The last piece is water. Water conservation. Water is a scarce asset. So we really are an energy and ag tech disruptor. When I looked at this market, Alberta today, 95% of the yellow peas we produce, we export them raw to China. They get processed into protein, isolate, starch, and fibers. Some of that comes back into North America. Call that the Great Circle supply chain, and it's the Great Circle GHG chain too. We're going to take that and process it into protein isolate, 85% pure protein, and that's going to go in your alternative meat burgers and your alternative dairy applications. The process, this is an energy room. If you think about a midstream fractionation business, you've got a distillation tower, and at different temperatures, your ethane, your butane, your propane and condensate, they fall out of solution. We're basically fractionating peas. And when you think about sustainability and waste management, we went through 2 exercises here. Right now, you're only getting 70% of the protein out of a pea in technology that's installed in North America. And it's 2-phase protein extraction. And you think in terms of that incremental investment, what it does is it recovers that smaller particle soluble protein to use in dairy alternative markets. It's another $9 million investment, and it's going to generate about $5 million a year in gross margin. So for that incremental investment, it's a 17-month payout, and you're essentially minimizing the waste stream. And that's a great economic adder to the business. That's our plant. You think about GHGs. If I were to present to you old school, we're going to build a dumb plant. And that dumb plant, if I do nothing, is going to generate about 70,000 metric tons a year of CO2. And what we did is a life cycle analysis of CO2. And at every piece of equipment in this facility, I can tell you how much power it's going to use, how much gas it's going to burn. And so we go through this exercise of looking at waste heat recapture, dry air recirculation, and you're knocking down your gas consumption by 20%. This is a water-intensive business, and I'll come to the math on that. We've got this residual residual fertilizer cake, and that's actually got biogas capability, and we sell that to a biogas facility to generate alternative power, and we get the GHG credits. The biggest thing that we're going to do with this plant is run it on solar power, and methodically going from 70,000 tons to net zero, and that's the pedigree we're creating. And you can walk in a store today and see products from Nestle and McCain's, and they've got a carbon zero label on it, and that's where the food industry is going, and we're setting this plant up to be at the front end of that. I want to talk about water quickly. Water is a scarce resource. This is a super water-intensive process, and when you're entrepreneurs out talking with municipalities, what we did is we were shortlisted on a couple, and we said, we're going to invest in water sustainability. And if you guys are truly aligned on sustainability, let's collaborate on how we can make this work. It's a $5.5 million investment to put in a reverse osmosis water facility, and we can recycle and reuse 70% of our processed water. And where we got to was we created a heavily discounted rate on water with the municipality, but that industrial water rate is tied to that minimum recycling. And when you go through the math, it's a 4-year payout on that water deal that we've done and installing that, but it's got a great sustainability pedigree to it. So that's really, as a business, what we've done. When I think about purpose, it's sustainability adjusted return on capital, but it's also about food security. And if I come up to the Canadian level, and I spent 20 years, the better part of 20 years as an oil and gas analyst, telling institutions how to invest in this space, frankly, what to long and what to short. It was a lot of fun, but a lot on policy too. And when I look at Canada, we've got, I think, let me use a Navy term here. We're on the radar, and we're ranged out to 1 mile. And all we see on that radar is an environmental pedigree. And I think a federal government that has a social media environmentalist aptitude, you put out, we're going to be, absolute 30% reduction in GHG emissions in ag. And, it's heart, like, success. And, when I think about that, the world we live in today, you see it, this pathway to net zero, it's a long one. And, when I mean cadence, projects like us, we're doing things in the short term. Carbon capture, hydrogen, these are long-dated alternatives. And when you look down that pathway right now, it's pockmarked, and it's literally pockmarked with howitzer and tank ammunition rounds expended. And that's the conflict that it's created. So when we think about this, and as a country, what's our social purpose? Are we really on this narrow scope of the environment, or do we have a greater social calling? We're a resource-endowed country. And we've lived this experience in energy for 20 years and not building pipelines and bottlenecking supply. And I'd say through the pandemic, we got complacent on global security risk, geopolitical risk. And lo and behold, here we are. And we've got risk premiums in food, we have risk premiums in energy, and they're not going away anytime soon. So you guys know about the energy transition. I'm going to leave you with a concept called the nitrogen transition. And the government came out with this 30% reduction and absolute reduction in GHGs. And really, when it comes down to it, that's nitrogen intensity. But if you step back and look at the relationship between nitrogen and crop yield, it's 0.9 to 0.95. And if you tell, in aggregate, the farming community, pull back your nitrogen, that's going to correlate into crop output, crop yield. And think about it, on a 30% reduction, you're a family of 4, take one of those plates off your table and take a third of the food on another plate. And that's going to be the impact on global food supply. So we have to be really smart and methodical, and we have as much a nitrogen transition as we do an energy transition. And companies like us, we're going to source direct from farmers. And in doing that, it's a feedback loop. We'll have 40 or 50 farmers supplying to our facility, and we're going to show them a histogram every year, and it's going to be, your fourth quartile on nitrogen use per yield, and your first quartile on diesel. And they can start making real-time assessments and decisions that impact their profitability, but impact their GHG footprint as well. Today, we're in a crisis, energy and food. And you look at those numbers, we're going to add another 2.3 billion people by 2050. Energy demand is going to grow by 50%, food demand by 70%. We need to be smart about farming, and we need to be realistic about the cadence of this transition. So what does it all mean? I think from a Canadian perspective, we do really well. We're 1.6% of global emissions. We're one of the cleanest energy producers on the planet. And we need to keep doing what we're doing, but tell our story differently. And what we need as a government, when you think about purpose, what is our purpose? Is it this, range at 1 mile on the environment? Or do we have a greater social responsibility to deliver energy and to deliver food and deal with the crises in real time? If you think about what happens in the food crisis, what it means to us is food inflation. We go to the store and we're paying more for food. What it means in developing countries is famine and poverty. And you put energy together, access to energy with that, it creates conflict, it creates war, and it exacerbates the risk. And that's the role that Canada can play. And we need that leadership, because what's happened in the last 20 years, we've basically told the global investment community that it's risk-off energy. And that risk-off energy, global capital just said the equity risk premium is way too high in Canada. We're going elsewhere. And we need to really define our purpose. It's a 155-year-old country, and we don't know where we're steering it. That's the kind of leadership. It's about visionary leadership and purpose. And if we can get that at the federal level, then we, the entrepreneurs, can turn around and do great things. And if I think about what we're doing, the economic growth, sustainability, and social purpose, they're mutually inclusive. And we're not treating it like that as a government right now. And when I think about what we're going to do in Strathmore, it's a $225 million investment. It's 80 full-time jobs. It's $7 million of direct employment income. And it's $120 million on Alberta's GDP. That's phase one, and we're going to double this facility. And we're going to do it with a net zero pedigree. We can add economic growth and diversification and do it with a zero carbon footprint. It's happening, and you're going to watch it build 40 minutes from where we sit. And when I think about visionary leadership, there's big V, big L, and that's at the federal level. And they need to embrace that concept in those circles and having all of those intersect and range out on that radar. Because when they do it, it's going to access capital for us. RBC talked about sustainability-linked loans. Great. But the quantum of capital to make this transition work, we need global access to capital, and we need to set a mindset in the investment community that Canada is sustainable, it can make great risk-adjusted environmental decisions, and it can deliver global food security, and it can deliver global energy security. And we as entrepreneurs, this is Alberta, this is what we do. We're innovative. We've got the technology, and we need that capital piece. And you put all three of those together, and we can create a lot of success in this province. Thank you.